It was late 1922 and British archaeologist Howard Carter was close to despair. He had spent decades combing the sands of the Egyptian desert with almost nothing to show for his work. His sponsor, a man named Lord Carnarvon, had wasted 5 years and a lot of his own money supporting Carter's work. The two men had shared a dream to uncover one of the last undiscovered tombs of the Egyptian pharaohs. Now, Carnarvon was ready to pull the plug on the whole project. But just as he and Carter were finally preparing to admit defeat, a simple but shocking discovery was made by Carter's team. Beneath one of the ancient workman's hut that Carter was documenting was revealed to be a single stone step carved into the bedrock. A few days later, one step turned into 12. Beyond those steps was a sealed plaster doorway covered in ancient Egyptian impressions. The bottom of the door, the seals revealed the name of the king buried inside, hidden away for 3,000 years, Tutankhamun. Let's put you in the shoes of Howard Carter on that November day in 1922 as he stepped inside perhaps the most famous archaeological discovery in modern history, the tomb of the boy king of Egypt, King Tut. Entering King Tut's tomb was not as simple as just breaking down the door and walking inside. Once that first door was removed, it was discovered that the whole entry passage had been filled with small limestone chips. It took an entire afternoon for the limestone fill to be removed, but in the process, Carter made an interesting discovery. He determined that Tut's tomb was actually not untouched. Based on holes in the doorway and objects found scattered beneath the limestone, Carter guessed it had been probably raided twice in the early years after Tut's death and burial. With the limestone removed, Carter and his men were free to move forward into the tomb itself. They traveled through a 26-foot long passageway until they came to another sealed door. Moving beyond this second door, Carter walked into a room that he called the Antechamber. This chamber is the main hub, as all the other rooms can only be accessed through this chamber. It's there that the magnificence of his discovery became clear. All around the chamber were objects of every kind. Statues, chariots, animal figures filled the room floor to ceiling. Almost 700 objects were eventually recorded and removed from the chamber. Everything was bathed in gold. While the items to a modern spectator appear to be elaborate, the antechamber still signaled a modestly filled tomb compared with those found from other pharaohs. This has led to many theories, including that Tut must have died at a young age and that the builders had a rushed timeline to finish the tomb. The treasures in the back left corner of the antechamber were only loosely organized, meaning that there had probably been some hurried efforts to restore order to the chamber after the grave robberies, or perhaps the grave robbers themselves were caught in the act and had made a mad scramble. This is a photo of the antechamber looking exactly as it did when Carter found it. There were couches, chests, baskets, large statues, and stools. You'll notice 3 large gilded beds. Before his burial, Tut's mummy would have been laid on each one of these beds in turn. This was done so that the boy king could take part in rituals where he would become one with the sky goddess and become transformed into the immortal sun. Under the first bed was found an ebony throne that Tut would have sat in as a child. Underneath the second was a whole pile of egg-shaped white vessels. These actually would have had food in them, which were to be consumed by the king for nourishment in his afterlife journey. Under the third bed was one of the most important discoveries of the whole tomb, a beautiful throne covered in gold top to bottom with elaborate inlays of glass and precious stone. On the back of this throne is a scene of Tut and his wife. In the painting, she is tending to her aching husband. In the back left corner are the scattered objects, which include 3 chariots. These mostly would have been used showcasing the pharaoh during public events. There was a fan found in the tomb that indicates one of Tut's pastimes was likely hunting for ostriches. The antechamber noticeably did not have elaborately colored walls filled with hieroglyphics, hymns, prayers, or great achievements that showcase Tut as would have been expected for a pharaoh, further indication of a rushed timeline. It took Carter and his team 3 months to remove and catalog all the items. As he and his men explored the antechamber, they discovered a small doorway behind a set of couches on the far wall. The door also showed signs of being broken into, and it led the men into a small room they called the annex. This was full of objects that Tut would have made use of in the afterlife. Nearly half the objects preserved in the tomb were crammed into this small room, including pottery jars, urns, baskets, and even board games. The annex was in complete disarray, and Carter guessed that the ancient men in charge of the tomb's security had simply dumped objects into the small room as they rushed to finish the preparation of the tomb. Perhaps the most famous objects in the whole antechamber sat against the north wall. There, 2 life-size statues stood guard in front of a sealed doorway. Both these statues were shaped in the image of the young king, wearing golden headdresses. Though Carter called them guardian statues, there's still speculation about the religious role of these statues beyond simply guarding the pharaoh's tomb. Carter knew that beyond the Guardians would be the burial chamber, and in that room he would learn if he had truly made the discovery of the century, or if he had just found another tomb raided long ago.